It's that time of the week again. It's time for Paddy's Say, where I'm joined by Swindon boxing trainer Paddy Fitzpatrick to discuss the latest in the world of boxing. Well, Paddy, thank you for joining me.
Good evening, sir.
It's not so much the latest in the world of boxing today, but more just a boxing topic. In particular, boxing rivalries and the greatest boxing rivalries. So I'm thinking Pacquiao, Marquez, Ben v Eubank, Froch Groves, even those kind of things. So with those in mind, have you got a particular favourite rivalry, past or present?
No particular favourite, because there's so many of them that were excellent. You can get Ali, Fraser, like you said, Barrera, Morales. That was a great one. The first fight was just mouth-watering. Mickey Ward against Arturo Gatti. That was a fantastic one. So there's a lot of excellent rivalries out there.
So, talking about ones from the past, are there many now that you could point the finger at and say, in the present, these are rivalries that are happening now?
Ones that are happening right now? There's a few bubbling under the surface. I mean, if you look even just over here alone, you got Tyson Fury, who's recognised as the heavyweight champion, but you also have Anthony Joshua, who's his profile is building just at a fast pace. He's got the IBF strap, and that's already bubbling under the surface to becoming a great rivalry. The chances are that both of those men will meet, and when they do, it'll be huge. In our super middleweight division, there's 4 or 5 guys there together, all class, all top of the tree guys that set to meet. Martin Murray's probably getting set to meet George Groves in the summer now. That's an excellent fight. But you had George against James DeGale. That was an excellent rivalry from the amateurs into the pros. George against Carl, like you said, excellent rivalry. And then you have Callum Smith. You add that to the bunch, and you got 4 guys there that everyone's talking about.
And so, obviously, we're here talking about great boxing rivalries. But for you, what constitutes a rivalry in boxing and just makes it not just a fight?
Usually, it's when you get the public involved, people involved that wouldn't normally watch a fight. When the general public get in and have an opinion of it, then that becomes a great rivalry. When you look back at Ben Eubanks, they were huge fights. The first one was so good, then everyone wanted to get involved again. If you look at Carl against George, same thing. The first one, because it was such an excellent fight, finished a bit controversial, so then everyone gets involved and has an opinion on it, and then that led to 80,000 people at Wembley. Those type of things, when you have a fight that attracts people outside of the normal boxing fans.
And so you yourself, you've been involved in the rivalries on the side of the ring. Does that change your build-up to a fight, or are you just professional throughout?
I'd like to think I'm professional throughout, regardless of what level of fight it is. You have a job to do as a coach. The fighters will get involved in the back and forth. Sometimes they do it to sell the fight. Sometimes they do it to get an upper hand on the opponent. But as a coach, you'd want to separate yourself from that, unless you had a measured approach to it and you were doing it for a reason. But mostly you'd want to be keeping your mind on the job and not getting involved as a fan of that fight, because you've got to take part in it.
And you mentioned something there, selling of tickets, which brings me on to my next question with regards to boxing rivalries. How many of them do you reckon are genuine rivalries, and how many of them do you think are just the boxers in the back of their heads thinking, we've got to try and push these tickets?
I don't know. If you look at somebody, say, like Mayweather knew how to sell himself. He didn't always do it to the way that we might think is tasteful or whatever else, but he done it to the way that he knew that would get people's attention. If you look even at the UFC with Conor McGregor, in the space of 10 UFC fights, a multi-millionaire. So he knows that he had to, being a good fighter wasn't enough. You got to sell yourself to the public. So people like that sell themselves regardless of who they're fighting, because they want to generate every fight that they're involved in to be one that people want to watch. And that's the way I would see that.
So by the sound of it, a lot of these professional boxers would actually make really good salesmen.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. You look at Hopkins, look at Sugar Ray Leonard, look at Ali, look at Mayweather. Those dudes knew how to sell himself. They could have sold anything. Sell snow to an Eskimo. They could have just they knew what they were doing.
So when they retire, they can go flog some double glazing. They'll be fine.
Make a fortune.
Fantastic. So this next question really is just out of intrigue for me, really, watching on as just a spectator and a fan. How does the boxer manage to knock 7 bells out of each other, lay into each other, and then at the end hug and say, "Great bloke"? How do they not let the red mist descend after a fight?
It's usually burnt out after the fight. You know, when you have a really intense fight over 15 rounds years ago, or over 12 rounds today, when that fight's done, there's a lot of adrenaline, a lot of energy being used up, and regardless of whether you like the dude in the other corner, at that point there's a mutual respect. Now usually if it's a big rivalry, they'll go home, have a shower, and the next day the spite is still building between them and it's back to where it was. But at that given point, there's a mutual respect.
Okay. And so, obviously, there's rivalries in other sports, but how important do you think rivalries are to the sport of boxing?
Massive. Massive, because the rivalries create the big fights, and the big fights get new people watching the game. No game, I think, would survive just having the fans of that sport itself. You know, and you want to be always attracting new people into it. And when you have rivalries in the fight game, because it's such a raw sport, it attracts in people who would never normally watch it. And you need rivalries in the game to keep building it. And the more rivalries that you can consistently have, there's not too many fighters out there that can carry the game kind of on their own, like an Ali. Like Mayweather ended up becoming known as the very best of our time, like Ali, like Sugar Ray Leonard, like Sugar Ray Robinson. There isn't too many men that can carry the game on their own, so you need the rivalries in order to carry the game. So they're vital to the sport.
Super. Thank you, Paddy. See you next week.
You, brother. Peace.
Cheers.
God bless.